everybody. Colin Slattery here with Kyle Palmer. This is Real Estate Insights in 15. Today, we're going to uncover some of the common misconceptions about inspections. What are some of the things we really want to look out for, as well as a bonus item at the end. So stay tuned till the end. But Kyle, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Colin. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to dive into this after doing inspections since 2021. Started out in Washington State and then moved over here to East Texas. Here out of Longview is where I do my home inspection business. I'm really excited to be a part of this. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. And hey, I thought it would be fun. Let's tell people how we met. How did you first introduce yourself, Kyle?
Man, it was 1 year ago, just about, right? Maybe 10 months ago or so. At an open house, I walked in and I brought you a scratch ticket, right? And a goodie bag.
Yeah. That's so funny. I remember you walked in and I was like, because as a realtor, not to get too far into what we do, but as a realtor, obviously we get lenders all the time, title companies, inspectors. But I always say when people are willing to work hard and go out there and do it, I'm always willing to give people a chance. And we've had the opportunity to work together. So that's been fun. Cool. Well, let's dive into it. So again, we're talking about inspections, some of the common misconceptions, things you really want to look out for. So Kyle, when you're doing inspections, what are some of the common inspection issues in Texas homes? Again, you're coming from Washington. I originally come from Arizona. So we may not have the exact same issues there that we would have here, but what are some of the ones you're seeing out here and what should buyers know about those?
Yeah, I would say the number one at the top of the list is going to be in Texas and Washington. It's going to be water. Especially over here in East Texas, everything's nice and green. So we have a lot of water that comes down to keep everything green. And that is something that you don't really think about if you're inside staying dry, enjoying the comfort of your home, unless there's a hole through your roof. But what's really going on the outside of your home is what I mean by that. So typically you'll get a lot of water piling up against the house. That can be the beginning signs of wood rot that can soak up. The soil around it can soak up that water and that'll impact your foundation too. And so it's not one of those things it's gonna happen and start making your house sink the first time it rains by any means. It's one of those things that we see patterns over time of that water and that drainage specifically, and how it can impact homes. So that's one that I can pretty much expect every time I walk in and start a home inspection.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you pointing that out too, because as somebody who comes from the desert originally, we actually have never even heard of water out there. And so water issues generally aren't a problem. And if we do see water, it's a real problem. Ironically, when we were preparing for this, I mentioned that I actually got a text message from my tenant back in Arizona stating that there was a water issue. So kind of funny. But yeah, that is, all the homes that I've seen so far and all the homes that, my clients have purchased or sold out here, water seems to be the name of the game. It's not every single time an issue, but it is one of those things, just like in Arizona, similar anyway, in Arizona, where we say that, homes, there's two types of homes in Arizona. Either you have termites or you're going to get them. And similar with water out here, where from what I can tell and what, you have told me and what some of the other inspectors have mentioned is, it's not about if, but it's about when water creates a real problem for you if you don't properly address it ahead of time. So, I totally agree with you. I think that is one of the big ones we're seeing. So another thing I kind of wanted to pivot to is when you're out doing an inspection, what are some of the common misconceptions that folks have about the inspection process, both on the buy side as well as the sell side?
Yeah, I think one that I get the most often and that I, as an inspector, try to educate my clients with is, we're coming out there and we're going to give a very detailed report and spend all the time testing everything in the home. But we are not working for the city. We're not working for the county. So we aren't code inspectors. And I'm at the end of the inspection, I'm not going to say this house passes or this house fails. Instead, what you're going to get is a detailed report with absolutely everything that's been tested. A couple of things that maybe are difficult to get to that can't be tested. But then the client, whether it's the seller or the buyer, is going to be the one that gets to make the decision. So they're the one that really decides pass or fail, or maybe get a little bit of work done or something else from that nature.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point because I actually have had sellers in the past say to me, when the inspection is coming around and it's time to do that due diligence for the buyer, they'll say to me something like, I really hope we pass inspection. And what I think they mean is like, I hope there's nothing major that comes up, because obviously that's everybody's worst nightmare is to have this long, protracted conversation about something that could be major on the home. Um, and sort of just to kind of make that point more clearly, as somebody who was a seller myself, and I've sold several homes, I know that when it comes to that point where there is something major, it is extremely stressful. And so that's why it's really important to have somebody who, such as yourself, knows what they're talking about, knows how to kind of guide the client on the inspection side through the process. And then obviously that's why people hire real estate agents. And I always say, like, even if you're not going to hire me, which I hope you do, but even if a buyer isn't going to hire me to do the transaction for them, or the seller doesn't hire me to do the transaction for them, it's really important that you hire somebody that knows how to coach you through this process. Because I'm not an inspector. It's outside the scope of my license. I'm not a contractor, an electrician, a plumber. Although I've played around with all that stuff, I can't advise on that. And that's why having a professional like you in it is really helpful, because then you can tell us on your end, hey, this is what I see commonly. This is what the code is. And stuff like that. So I think that's really important. Now, you mentioned sellers, and this is a big question that I think a lot of people aren't thinking about right now. I was just looking at my Arizona market this morning and the data for that, and just how many homes are sitting on the market right now. And it's crazy. I mean, we have the most amount of homes, and I think in 15 years out there, and DFW is not a whole lot different, and even Tyler. And so one thing that I've thought about, I know you and I have chatted about this a few times, is how can we give an edge to our sellers so that when they go into the listing process and they're live on the market, that they actually can stand out amongst other homes in the area or other similar homes around the area that buyers might be considering. And so one of the ways I thought that would work really well for that is doing a pre-listing inspection. So actually having you come out, in the East Texas market, or having my inspector in the DFW area, or my other inspector out in Phoenix come out to my client's house and actually inspect it before we go live on the market. Do you recommend doing something like that?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of those, and it kind of goes back to that misconception of the pass and fail that sometimes clients can have, whether they're buyer or the seller. When you take the time to get a pre-listing inspection, you're going to do a couple of things. Number one is from the marketability side, at least from what I've seen for clients that I've done these sellers inspections, these pre-listing inspections. You stand out. You're kind of like that student that goes the extra mile in class. You're going to not only have all the information and the beautiful listing and everything else too, but you're going to have this information saying, hey, we already went ahead and took the extra step and have all this information for you, which I believe relieves all the parties involved that, hey, this is all right here. I think the other thing too is that information and that data is pretty helpful with the seller and managing those expectations. I've lived in my house for going on 4 or 5 years now, and I'm an inspector, so I get up and like to walk on my roof every so often, and in the attic and everything too. Thankfully, we don't have a lot of crawl spaces here, not one for my home. But doing those things is not a common item. It's not an annual thing for most homeowners. So if you take the time to get somebody to go into those areas, look at those major systems before you list your house or while you're in that process, you're going to get all the information as to, hey, we might need to get this fixed, or we might need to prepare to negotiate with this item here. It's going to help you, and it's going to help your agent and client. Everybody involved is going to have that information and be able to better market the home. At least that's what I've seen and heard from the clients I've done these for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it gives you all the information up front, so there's no surprises. And what a lot of other people in the industry will do is try to, sometimes sugarcoat it and make it seem like it's not a problem, or, set their clients up for failure. And one of the things that I try to do is, especially when it comes to a pre-listing inspection, which I've done on several of my listings, if there is something that is major that comes up, not everybody's going to tell you this, but maybe it's not the right time to list your home. And while I'd love to have the business and work with you, I'd actually rather it be in a good scenario, maybe in 6 months after you've had time to get some of this evaluated and taken care of, or maybe it's just not the time. You got to wait a few years. And so I think, especially as we start to see some of those sellers who bought within the last 4 years get back on the market, and there's not a huge equity gain in any of the markets that I work in, you really want to evaluate, like, hey, can I stand to lose if this major thing comes up on an inspection? And that's why doing the pre-listing inspection helps, just really, again, for me and you to advise the sellers what the appropriate course of action is. So I think that's really helpful. And it is something that I have been kind of playing around with some of my sellers, just to see if it's something that's helpful for them. But the more I think about it, it just makes a lot of sense. Well, I think we covered a ton of stuff here. Obviously the whole goal here is to just give as much information in a short amount of time. And so, Kyle, I appreciate you doing that, because I think, again, we want to kind of dispel some of the rumors or myths about how home inspections work. We haven't covered everything, and that's why give us a call if you're thinking about buying or selling. My information is going to be in the description below. But if you have any further questions for Kyle and I, both our contact information will be in the description below. Also, if you haven't, subscribe, follow this channel. We have a ton of content that we're putting on every week, including things like this every couple of weeks, where we go through a specific topic in real estate. But also, if you just like to tour homes and check different homes out and listen to me babble for 15, 20 minutes, you can check out some of my walkthroughs on the channel as well. But Kyle, thanks so much for coming, man. I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to seeing you soon, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Colin. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk to you later.